How small are your hands? It's a weird question, I know. It's definitely not as obvious a question as it appears at first. But when you get into it, Tolkien makes a very good point about those of us who may feel unimportant. Let's see what he has to say. Hello everybody, welcome to Aude and Tulava, where we are walking our way through Tolkien's Legendarium. After 4 long weeks, we are finally finishing up our trek through Book 2, Chapter 2, the Council of Elrond. If you haven't watched the other videos, check out this playlist here to make sure you're caught up. And don't forget, I linked some of my favorite cover versions in the description below if you'd like to support the channel. So let's dive in. Okay, so let's see how long I can go before I reference Corey Olsen. Let me know your prediction in the comments below. We catch up right after Gandalf finishes his story, and there's basically an awkward silence. Elrond finally breaks it with a couple of interesting things to say. This is grievous news concerning Saruman, he says, for we trusted him and he is deep in all our counsels. It is perilous to study too deeply the arts of the enemy, for good or for ill. But such falls and betrayals, alas, have happened before. Of the tales that we have heard this day, the tale of Frodo was most strange to me. Now, one would assume that he already heard Gandalf's story from Gandalf himself, as Gandalf got to Rivendell 2 days before the Hobbits. Maybe he just has the gift of repeating facts after someone else says them, or a better idea is he's just reinforcing how terrible it is to lose the ally of Saruman. Think about it. Had he not turned, not only would they have had someone else to help the company moving forward, but they would have been able to move freely through the Gap of Rohan. Theodred would be alive. There would be more Rohirrim to ride to the aid of Gondor. The possibilities really do kind of boggle the mind. But when you really start to think about it, this is exactly what needed to happen to turn the tides of the conflict in the right way. Not to go into too much detail into a chapter we won't be getting to for months, but if Saruman had not held up the Rohirrim, they would have arrived nice and early and been in the walls of Minas Tirith, where the cavalry would be super useful. More useful, in fact, than surprising the orc army from behind and routing a large portion of it. Obviously not. It just goes to show how Eru's words of "shall prove but mine instrument" are really true. He uses even the most evil actions for the good of Middle-earth. But what about his reaction to Frodo's story? I thought, personally, it was a little odd he found the tale so surprising. Like, you didn't hear the tale from Aragorn or Gandalf during the 4 days Frodo was unconscious? But I realize he's essentially saying he thought Bilbo was the exception. Generational talent, as they like to say in sports. Bilbo is the one hobbit who could even get close to doing what he did. There are none other that could impress Elrond, short folk that they are. Heck, the elves even named the dwarves Naugrim, which means stunted people. So obviously they don't think super well of short people. But here Frodo is, arriving on Elrond's doorstep at death's doorstep, surviving a Morgul blade, and not just that one hobbit, 3 more hobbits. They weren't stabbed, but not many people survive under the gaze of the Nazgul in such spirits. I think it's worth pointing out that Elrond, whose dad is Arundel, was impressed by the hobbits, which in and of itself is impressive. And now we come to it. Tom freaking Bombadil. Should he take the ring? It doesn't affect him, so that's a great idea, right? No. And I'm glad there's more than just one person saying no. If you want to know what I think Tom Bombadil is, I would recommend this video right here. Something to note here is Elrond calls him a strange creature, which honestly makes me feel pretty good. It means Elrond doesn't fully understand him either. In fact, we learn Tom's name among the elves is Eärwain ben Adar, oldest and fatherless. Personally, I think that supports my theory he's a genus Loki. I still don't know how to say it, but your mileage may vary. But why shouldn't Tom have the ring to protect it? I think Gandalf here says it best. Could we not still send messengers to him and obtain his help? Asked Erestor. It seems that he has a power even over the ring. No, I should not put it so, said Gandalf. Say rather that the ring has no power over him. He is his own master, but he cannot alter the ring himself, nor break its power over others. And a paragraph later, and if he were given the ring, he would soon forget it, or most likely throw it away. Such things have no hold on his mind. And here I can happily say that all Gandalf says backs up what I thought about Tom. Gandalf says the ring has no power over Tom, not Tom having power over the ring. That's where we landed while we were in Tom's house. The ring amplifies the desires, the wants of people. If you want not, the ring has no hold over you. Tom is that person. He is not only content with what he has, he is perfectly content. But if he's content with what he has, it would make sense that he wouldn't think about it and might even forget about it. I'd be willing to bet that somebody here watching has had someone, whether a parent, significant other, whatever, throw something away that you loved, but they thought was not important. They weren't trying to be rude, hopefully, They just didn't think about that thing. It had no hold over their mind. But maybe they could convince him to take it since he's so strong. This will be a longer reading, but I think we need to hear it all to fully understand the context. But in any case, said Glorfindel, to send the ring to him would only postpone the day of evil. He is far away. We could not now take it back to him unguessed, unmarked by any spy. And even if we could, sooner or late the Lord of the Rings would learn of its hiding place and would bend all his power towards it. Could that power be defied by Bombadil alone? I think not. I think that in the end, if all else is conquered, Bombadil will fall, last as he was first, and then night will come. I know little of Iarwain save the name, said Galdor, but Glorfindel I think is right. Power to defy our enemy is not in him, unless such power is in the earth itself. And yet we see that Sauron can torture and destroy the very hills. What power still remains lies with us, here in Imladris, or with Círdan at the Havens, or in Lorien. But have they the strength? Have we here the strength to withstand the enemy, the coming of Sauron at the last, when all else is overthrown? I have not the strength, said Elrond, neither have they. Then if the ring cannot be kept from him forever by strength, said Glorfindel, two things only remain for us to attempt: to send it over the sea, or to destroy it. There are so many good nuggets in here. Glorfindel, who is in the top 3 people in the council in terms of power, knows what he's talking about. If he says Tom couldn't hold out against Sauron, I believe him. And Galdor makes another good point for Tom being a genius Loki when he talks about the power in the earth to resist Sauron, except that the earth itself can be tortured as well. What I never noticed until I listened to Corey Olsen, I don't know what the time of that is, but let me know in the comments how close you were. Why does Galdor ask about the strength of Círdan at the Havens, Elrond at Rivendell, and strength of Lorien? Corey likes to say this is the worst kept secret in Middle-earth. When Celebrimbor learned of Sauron's designs regarding the rings of power he made, he hid the 3 rings that were made without Sauron's help, or the 3 elven rings. What did he do with them? He gave them to people. Elrond got his from Gil-galad, Galadriel got one, and Círdan got one. And this is exactly why Galdor didn't ask about the strength of Mirkwood. Elrond, Círdan, and Galadriel all have elven rings and control the 3 elven strongholds, Imladris, or Rivendell, Lorien, and the Grey Havens, respectively. We'll gloss over the fact that Círdan no longer has his ring for now. That's why it's thought they would have the strength. They all have rings themselves. They've flourished and grown because of these rings. The power of the rings changes, or rather, doesn't change, when. It's kind of an obvious idea, really. But Elrond shoots that down pretty quickly. They have not the power. So what do? Glorfindel gives words to their 2 options: send it over the sea or destroy it. And this part is actually kind of funny. I think it's safe to assume Elrond knows what he wants to do and just needs to direct the conversation around to his way of thinking. He tells us that Gandalf said, we can't destroy it with our own craft. Of course, they all knew that because Gandalf already said it. So, duh. And the Valar would never accept the ring to keep it safe. It's their problem in Middle-earth. He's not actually arguing with Glorfindel here. Besides, I think Glorfindel is kind of a plant in the crowd. He's asking the right questions and proposing the right solutions to lead everyone present to the right conclusion. Keeping to that path, Glorfindel asks if they could just throw it in the sea. Not only is that a terrible idea because the ring might be found somehow, not to mention they should be thinking of the long-term solution, the for all time solution, not the next few years solution. But Galdor also brings up a great point. If the return to Iarwain be thought too dangerous, then flight to the sea is now fraught with gravest peril. My heart tells me that Sauron will expect us to take the western way when he learns what has befallen. He soon will. The 9 have been unhorsed indeed, but that is but a respite, ere they find new steeds and swifter. It's a dangerous road already and growing more dangerous by the day, so taking it to the sea is right out. Then, said Erestor, there are but 2 courses, as Glorfindel already has declared: to hide the ring forever, or to unmake it. But both are beyond our power. Who will read this riddle for us? None here can do so, said Elrond gravely. At least none can foretell what will come to pass if we take this road or that. But it seems to me now clear which is the road that we must take. The westward road seems easiest, therefore it must be shunned. It will be watched. Too often the elves have fled that way. Now at this last we must take a hard road, a road unforeseen. There lies our hope, if hope it be, to walk into peril, to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. The whole conversation so far has built up to this moment. Elrond has guided the conversation, had stories told that shape his narrative, and he finally drops his judgment. The westward road has too often been taken by the elves and seems easiest, thus the most predictable. Can't do that, clearly. The only option is to take the ring to Mordor, to the fires of Mount Doom, only 30 miles from the fortress of Barad-dûr. This whole time they've been talking about strength. Who has the strength to resist? Even though they've all said it's a bad idea to rely on strength, since the strongest places in the world don't have enough of it to resist Sauron. I can't help but understand Boromir at least a little bit here. Why not just use the ring? The men of Gondor are valiant and they will never submit, but they may be beaten down. Valor needs first strength and then a weapon. Let the ring be your weapon. If it has such power as you say, take it and go forth to victory. We haven't bowed yet. We are still unbroken. We will use the ring to victory. Again, this makes me realize how provincial Boromir is. He's resisted the armies of Sauron so far. Gondor is the might to the west of Mordor, so the enemy has clearly put forth all of its strength so far to defeat Gondor. What else would Sauron need to keep his strength for? Gondor is the endgame in Boromir's eyes still. Let's use the ring. Alas, no, said Elrond. We cannot use the ruling ring. That we now know too well. It belongs to Sauron and was made by him alone, and it's altogether evil. Its strength, Boromir, is too great for anyone to wield at will, save only those who have already a great power of their own. But for them it holds an even deadlier peril. The very desire of it corrupts the heart. Consider Sauron. If any of the wise should, with this ring, overthrow the Lord of Mordor using his own arts, he would then set himself up on Sauron's throne, and yet another Dark Lord would appear. And that is another reason why the ring should be destroyed. As long as it is in the world, it will be a danger even to the wise. For nothing is evil in the beginning. Even Sauron was not so. I fear to take the ring and hide it. I will not take the ring to wield it. The most important part of this section, in my opinion, is the word cannot. Now, I find a cool post about the difference between Gandalf saying shall in the movies when confronting the Balrog versus his saying cannot in the book. It's obviously not the exact same situation we're talking about, but it discusses the differences between those two words and is worth a read. Elrond says they cannot use the ring. He doesn't say they should not, or it would be a better idea to not use the ring. They cannot use it. Using the word cannot implies capability. They're not capable of using the ring. I didn't even pick up on it until listening through the Bridge of Khazad-dûm section on the Prancing Pony podcast. It's not a question of whether they should or shouldn't use the ring. Elrond is trying to put that line of thought right out of their head even before the journey begins. It's impossible to use the ring. Who cares if it's a bad idea if you can't possibly do it anyway? We cannot wield it, so don't even bother thinking about it anymore. And of course, the conversation strays back to strength with Boromir leading the way. Gondor will trust to the weapons they already have, their strength, since no one else will ally with them. Boromir says, "For though I do not ask for aid, we need it. It would comfort us to know that others fought also with all the means that they have." "Then be comforted," said Elrond, "for there are other powers and realms that you know not, and they are hidden from you. Anduin the Great flows past many shores, ere it comes to Argonath and the gates of Gondor." Glóin, still thinking of strength, bemoans the loss of the dwarven rings and asks about the 3 elven rings, finishing his thoughts with, "But still there are the 3. What of the 3 rings of the elves? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago. Are they idle? I see elf lords here, will they not say?" And I guess to the uninitiated, he poses a really good question. Rather than uninitiated, I should say the non-elfin. As we saw a couple pages ago, this is one of the worst kept secrets in Middle-earth. Elrond here gets a little exasperated that his hints were not being picked up on. The elves returned no answer. "Did you not hear me, Glóin?" said Elrond. "The 3 were not made by Sauron, nor did he ever touch them. But of them it is not permitted to speak, so much only in this hour of doubt I may now say. But they were not made as weapons of war or conquest. That is not their power. Those who made them did not desire strength or domination or hoarded wealth, but understanding, making, and healing, to preserve all things unstained. These things the elves of Middle-earth have in some measure gained, though with sorrow, but all that has been wrought by those who wield the 3 will turn to their undoing, and their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron if he regains the 1. It would be better that the 3 had never been. That is his purpose." Elrond has tried to wind the conversation around to this point without saying it the whole time. Galdor clearly knows where the rings have, I'll say, traditionally been, though he only says so by mentioning the elven strongholds. Here, for those who are not Elven, he speaks as plainly as he can. It's like talking to that friend who, I think I was most of the time, who just couldn't pick up on the lie that everyone was looking at them with super wise, like, dude, we're good. You don't need to say that part. Yeah, unfortunately, that was me. And it seems like Golan finally gets the hint and moves on. And here we find another plant in the crowd. Aristor gets us back on track in what I can only assume is a question decided days ago by Elrond, and he sets up Gandalf pretty well also. Thus we return once more to destroying of the ring, said Aristor. And yet we come no nearer. What strength have we for the finding of the fire in which it was made? That is the path of despair. Of folly, I would say, if the long wisdom of Elrond did not forbid me. Despair or folly, said Gandalf? It is not despair, for despair is only for those who see the end beyond all doubt. We do not. It is wisdom to recognize necessity when all other courses have been weighed, though as folly it may appear to those who cling to false hope. Well, let folly be our cloak, a veil before the eyes of the enemy. For he is very wise and weighs all things to a nicety in the scales of his malice. But the only measure that he knows is desire for power, and so he judges all hearts. Into his heart the thought will not enter that any will refuse it, that having the ring we may seek to destroy it. If we seek this, we shall put him out of his reckoning. Now Gandalf says a lot here. He first gives us a little bit of a kind of world magic building. Despair is only for those that see the end. So if we haven't picked up on it yet, there's a magic of foreknowledge or foretelling in Middle-earth. But he's also acknowledging he doesn't possess enough of that to stray into despair. And if we look back at the Ainulindale in the Silmarillion, we learn that Eru Iluvatar is the only one who has seen the end of time. The Valar saw much of the future of Middle-earth, but it was not all revealed to them. So not only is Gandalf here saying he can't know what the future brings, he's saying, don't bother even thinking about it. I don't know, and the Valar don't know. If the Valar don't know, no one else knows. Maybe he's just speaking truth, or maybe he's trying to comfort everyone by saying, hey, we don't know, anything can happen. He also gets into the nature of the ring, which is the nature of the ring's maker. Folly will be their cloak, a way for them to act in secret and without being seen, because Sauron desires strength and power and just couldn't fathom his enemies throwing away their finest weapon. We can see that in the ring's powers as well. It takes desires and stokes them too big for the bear to handle until he uses the ring and falls to the power of the maker of it. But Sauron essentially doesn't even consider the fact that his enemies may destroy the ring. It's folly to throw the strength away. Of course, that is a hard path to tread. Elrond puts words to this in such a powerful way. The road must be trod, but it will be very hard, and neither strength nor wisdom will carry us far upon it. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. Small hands. Often is the case in this world. Unimportant people doing what must be done. The general may direct the army, but it's the men in the proverbial trenches who actually get it done. They're the ones who can hold it together and make a stand against all odds. The big ideas can never be executed on without the small hands producing. A big idea is nothing without the people who make it happen. And true to form, Bilbo speaks up. Very well, Master Elrond, said Bilbo suddenly. Say no more. It is plain enough what you are pointing at. Bilbo, the silly hobbit, started this affair, and Bilbo had better finish it, or himself. I was very comfortable here and getting on with my book. If you want to know, I am just writing an ending for it. I had thought of putting, and he lived happily ever afterwards to the end of his days. It is a good ending, and none the worse of having been used before. Now I shall have to alter that. It does not look like coming true, and anyway, there will evidently have to be several more chapters, if I live to write them. It's a frightful nuisance. When ought I to start? The only person to even think about laughing here is Boromir. Bilbo isn't really blustering here. He's earnestly saying he'll go. And I think it's so Frodo doesn't have to. I think Bilbo has an inkling the trip is a one-way trip. He's older and knows Frodo has much more time left, so he offers to go. But they all know whose job it is. That's what this whole meeting was about. Small hands do them not because they're told, because they must. Frodo glanced at all the faces, but they were not turned to him. All the council sat with downcast eyes as if in deep thought. A great dread fell on him as if he was awaiting the pronouncement of some doom that he had long foreseen and vainly hoped might after all never be spoken. An overwhelming longing to rest and remain at peace by Bilbo's side in Rivendell filled all his heart. At last, with an effort, he spoke and wondered to hear his own words, as if some other will was using his small voice. I will take the ring, he said, though I do not know the way. Small hands indeed, hands that only wish to be with his beloved, to have peace. Who of all the wise could have foreseen? But Frodo now will be named among the elf friends of old, Hador, Hurin, Turin, and Beren himself, the smallest of hands. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also don't forget, out into them, they shall come again.